Okay, brilliant. We've hit the bar of 40 attendees. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you from wherever you are joining. My name is Jeremy Boy. I'm the lead data scientist of the UNDP Accelerator Labs Network in the global team. And we're, on behalf of myself and my colleagues that we will introduce in a second, thrilled to be here for UN 2.0 week for this side event where we will be talking about AI and collective intelligence. Maybe just before we jump in, a quick plug for the UN Behavioral Science Group. A big thank you to the people behind it from the UN Innovation Network and colleagues in the Secretariat for organizing all of this. If you're interested, we strongly encourage you to check out the broader network here and to sign up for it if you can follow the link here at the bottom of the page. Maybe we can I'll stop sharing my screen quickly for a very quick round of introductions. I'm joined by three colleagues here. Oops. Over to you, Drasko.
Hi everyone, my name is Draško Drašković. I'm the AI R&D coordinator within the Global Accelerator Labs team and the head of exploration in the Accelerator Lab in Serbia. Thank you. Over to Jennifer.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. I'm Jennifer Hotsko. I'm head of exploration for the UNDP Panama Accelerator Lab. And Ifat, we don't see you.
Yes, let me fix that while I introduce myself. So I'm Ifat Anzo. I'm working at UNDP Accelerator Lab Bangladesh as the head of exploration.
Brilliant. Thank you all. And again, welcome everyone. I see the numbers keep increasing. This is great. So I'll go back to the presentation now. And so again, today we're going to talk about our work at the intersection of collective intelligence and artificial intelligence. And before we jump in, I wanted to start with these two quotes and a bit of a quiz. The two quotes are about artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence. The first one states that from 3 to 8 years, we will have a machine with the general intelligence of an average human being. The second one states that if you define artificial general intelligence as smarter than the smartest human, I think it's probably next year or within 2 years. Obviously, these are not from the same person, these two quotes. They're not from the same time either. And so the quick quiz here is, would you care to guess how much time separates these two quotes? Maybe you can post this in the chat or the Q&A. I don't know if I can see the Q&A. Yeah, I can. Does anyone care to take a guess? 6 months? Yeah, the chat is disabled, so please, yeah, use the Q&A for this. Maybe 50 years, yeah, much closer. 3 months. Okay, because we almost got the response there. The first one is from Marvin Minsky, reported in Life magazine in 1970. The second one is from Elon Musk, last year reported on Reuters. So 54 years separate these two quotes. And so the point here is that, it can be quite overwhelming. Indeed, it feels like every 3 months, 6 months, something huge is happening in the world of AI. The point is to put this a bit into perspective. There is a long history. There are different epistemologies, different currents within AI that have been going on for a long time. And so, we're still progressing, I guess, in this space. And even before that, just a quick plug here, the term itself, artificial intelligence, dates back to 55, 56. But here, Frank Rosenblatt, introducing the perceptron, was already talking about an intelligent automation back in 1958. So even earlier than that, 12 years earlier than that. So to get us started, today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and collective intelligence. We're going to reflect on some of the work that we've been doing in the UNDP Accelerator Labs Network over the past 5 years, even almost 6 years. I'm joined here by all my colleagues who have now introduced themselves. Everyone will jump in at some point throughout the presentation. And maybe to start, to give you a bit of an overview for those of you who are not familiar with the UNDP Accelerator Lab Network, we are a very large learning network of social innovation labs, 89 social innovation labs distributed in so many countries, effectively working in 113 countries from within UNDP country offices. And so what we bring to UNDP and more broadly to the development ecosystem is an R&D capacity for indeed sustainable development. This is shifting slightly. There are things happening internally, but we'll skip that for now. What's at the core of what we do is being unapologetically bottom up. So our approach to R&D goes to learning from and with the people we serve to inform global development offers. So rather than being very top down, very institutional, what the labs do and what we do as a learning network is try to understand things that are happening on the ground and elevate that into global offers for sustainable development. And one of the core methods that we've been using for the past 5 years, a bit more than 5 years, has been collective intelligence design. And so there's a history to this as well. Our particular approach is very much inspired, and we've done a lot of work with colleagues in Nesta. And the way we see collective intelligence design is quite simple. It's people using technology to make sense of, leverage existing data, or generate new data to expand basically the range of information, ideas, and insights that can help us address complex sustainable development challenges, problems, priorities. And so behind this working definition, if we will, we have a set of 4 core collective intelligence design principles. The first one being around diversity. So collective intelligence helps increase diversity of people we involve and the opinions we listen to. That's really important to us. Collective intelligence enables people to contribute views and ideas independently and freely without any kind of direct institutional oversight. It enables people to, or enables us to integrate different types of data and unlock fresh ideas. And most importantly, it is citizen-centered. Our big focus is really on data empowerment, making sure that people can, again, harness the data, create new data for their own purposes, and not be extractive of this. Now, most of our collective intelligence design work is embodied in these 2 publications. The first one from 2021, the second one from 2024, both in partnership with Nesta. The first one, we were looking at how collective intelligence design can support sustainable development practice. So where are the areas, the niches, the use cases in which collective intelligence can, serve the furthering of the sustainable development goals. And so we studied or analyzed 277 case studies, from which we identified 6 use cases of collective intelligence for the sustainable development goals. And within those, 15 methods through which we connect people with technology to make sense of data and generate new insights and new solutions for sustainable development. We then furthered and specified that work last year, or over the last year and a half, looking specifically at collective intelligence for climate action. And so we reviewed 100+ climate initiatives, including several from Accelerator Labs, from the work directly done within our network across 45 countries. And what we identified are 5 gaps that collective intelligence can help close. And so we talk of the 5 Ds. The first one we qualify as the doing gap. Using collective intelligence design in sustainable development practice gets people active about the problem or in the problem space, gets them engaged in the problem. It helps close or reduce the diversity gap, getting multiple communities working around the same problem for their own localized version of the issue, creates a broader diversity of inputs and perspectives on, in this case, climate adaptation and climate action. It reduces the distance gap. In a nutshell, this is reducing the distance between experts and lay people. If you get communities involved in the problem, they build their own knowledge and reduce the gap with whatever expertise might come from the outside. It reduces the decision-making gap by indeed bringing people together who might have different perspectives, different opinions originally, and getting them to work together and make collective decisions together. And finally, it reduces the data gap or closes the data gap, particularly in countries, in locations where we as an organization, as UNDP, operate, where there might be, big or important gaps in understanding climate adaptation and resilience to climate change. And so, in a nutshell, we see collective intelligence as a method that helps infuse high-resolution data, very localized data, and builds on lived experience of people, and most importantly, it generates local action. And so if we stick to this working definition, this sort of interaction between technology, people, and data, the question that we've been asking is how can we steer technologies like artificial intelligence, and in this case, very specifically artificial intelligence, to best support collective intelligence practices for sustainable development, for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So obviously the starting point is to define what we mean by this technology, by artificial intelligence. There are plethora of ways of qualifying artificial intelligence. There are different currents, as I mentioned, and so on. There's a long history. For working purposes, we consider it's a pretty loose definition of advanced computational techniques that rely on large amounts of data to build models that can help make decisions, predict outcomes, or generate outputs. And often these outputs are more data. And as we saw at the top, this has a long history, and it doesn't seem like this history, in as much as consumer applications seem everywhere at the moment, it doesn't mean that this history has ended. We're always expecting in the next 2-3 years the next change. And so based on this, and based also particularly in the environments, the countries in which we work in, we tend to consider AI still on the horizon. And if you consider AI on the horizon as something to get to, the technology to achieve, there are obviously different pathways to get there. And this is very, very nicely embodied or captured in the title of this year's UNDP Human Development Report. It's a matter of choice. And indeed, as this quote puts it, the outcomes of technological change are never or not inevitable. They are contingent on social choices. And so the big question for us, and we'll get into this through the different parts of the presentation, is who gets a say in making that choice? Who gets a say in building the narratives and drawing the path or the paths towards our collective technological futures? And pulling further from the Human Development Report, I like these two quotes. So even if AI or any given AI can beat a human at any task, exceeding and replacing human intelligence will remain far beyond the horizon. The distance arises from the fact that collective human intelligence far exceeds what individuals can accomplish alone. And so rather than waiting for such an AI to exist, we can instead rely on existing technology to augment individual humans in their pursuits and leveraging collective intelligence, essentially. And so this really makes the case, in my opinion, for indeed looking at how AI can complement collective intelligence design, and how should we be, sort of tracing a path towards that. And the Human Development Report makes a very, very good job of, explaining or unpacking how AI should indeed be complementary and not replacing human intellect, human work, and so on. And so this leads us to our own working definition of AI for collective intelligence. We are aware that there are different groups out there who are working on this as well. There may be variations in the definitions. If some of you are on the call, we're very happy to connect. Our working definition is leveraging these advanced computational techniques, again, the broad definition of AI and data, to enhance distributed intelligence and decision-making. So connected to, again, our collective intelligence design principles. And most importantly, AI for collective intelligence, AI for CI, is not for the solitary analyst in an ivory tower. It's for collectives and communities who are closest to the problems that we seek to address or solve. And so back to the way that we work within the Accelerator Labs and or across the network, this bottom-up R&D approach, at the core of everything that we do is seeing, hearing, and testing with the people that we serve, with communities on the ground. And so I'm going to give you a brief overview of what this looks like in the space of AI, of things that we're picking up, again, across our learning network. And then we're going to go into two very concrete examples from our colleagues, Ifat and Jennifer. Oops. So what we see, the first part here, in all of the Accelerator Labs, roughly 90, we have a function or a person whose role it is to do solutions mapping. Among other things, the idea is to go out to communities, to interact with people in country with different innovation ecosystems, and identify what solutions are emerging to address specific sustainable development priorities, challenges that UNDP is working on with government in country. And so we've built here a documentation platform. We've documented over the past 5 years roughly 6,000 solutions, not all of them, of course, related to big data and AI. And what I did here is simply went in with a basic keyword search, big data and AI, and retrieved 156 solutions that, again, have been identified across our network. And what's interesting here is not so much that this would be a representative overview, of course, of how AI is being developed and for what purposes and so on, and where most particularly, because otherwise we would just see a big bubble over the US and over China, but rather seeing the distribution and seeing that indeed AI initiatives, AI solutions are being developed, but like not everywhere, but almost across the global majority countries. And what's interesting is we also get a sense of what are the sort of priority domains that people are developing these solutions in. This, of course, is not entirely representative either, because it's linked to the work of Accelerator Labs in so many countries. But what we see at a high level is a dominance of agriculture, using AI for agricultural purposes, agrotech, precision agriculture, and so on. For technology and industry, for health and well-being, for education and training. Maybe these seem, somewhat expected, but if you go down the list, then you find maybe more, uncommon approaches or uncommon areas of application in biodiversity, oceans, seas, and fishing, water management, and so on. The second thing that we do, obviously, is we hear what people talk about, in this case, their concerns, their aspirations, and so on with AI. And with this idea, again, inherited from the Human Development Report of this being a matter of choice, as I mentioned, the question is, who gets a say in the path or in the trajectory that we take? And so we did some work last year with the University of Columbia SIPA capstone students on developing this framework for national dialogues on frontier technologies that we tested in Paraguay and in Morocco to, again, get a sense of what people across civil society and a bit beyond, what are their aspirations, what are their concerns, what are their fears, what are their hopes regarding AI and the development and deployment of AI in their countries. And so we've published the framework and an associated report that I encourage you to go and see. And we expanded this work a little bit earlier this year, in part is what Ifat will be presenting in just a minute. But we also conducted a sort of meta consultation because we have this learning network. We have labs in this case, 16 different countries who have had some form or conducted some form of national, engagement, dialogue, conversation, consultation on AI over the past year and a half. And so what we did was try to pick up signals here as well of what people talk about. What, again, are their aspirations? What are their concerns? Where are the domains that we should be focusing on, and so on. So I'm not going to go into the details here, unfortunately, for a matter of time. To move quickly to the last part, which is what we test. And so the Accelerator Labs also do a lot of exploration and experimentation with new solutions, whether they're sourced through solutions mapping, whether they're sort of homegrown within the Accelerator Lab. And here we see examples in the top from Panama, and we will hear more from Jennifer in a second about this. From Tanzania, from Guatemala, from Ecuador, from Zimbabwe. And what we did at the global level is look at, do a sort of meta-analysis of here 29 different experiments conducted in 29 countries, 29 labs, to look at at patterns of how, what kind of data, predominant data source, with what kind of computational technique is applied to what sustainable development priority or challenge. And so at a high level, what we see is a lot of use of Earth observation data, whether high resolution drone data or lower resolution satellite imagery, to do land cover land use classification or object detection within the imagery and classification on top, and then apply this to typically identifying pollution hotspots, whether bodies of waste on land or in water bodies, or air pollution with brick kilns in India, or in connection to what we see through the solutions mapping for precision agriculture and pastoralism. Another big trend that we see is obviously using online posts and text classification and other natural language processing techniques to understand better gender-based violence online, to understand the spread of mis and disinformation, information integrity more broadly, and to understand tourism patterns as well, typically in Tanzania and in Malawi. And so with that broad overview now, I hope you're kind of getting the sense that what is also very central to all of this idea of, going from collective intelligence, looking at how AI can support these practices and so on. Something that's central in all of our work is participation. And so here we're going to we're going to hear from our colleague Ifat in Bangladesh, who's going to talk about what we hear and, this idea of driving participation in shaping the narratives around AI. And then from Jennifer from Panama, looking at how AI can complement and support participatory practices with different socio-demographics, different types of populations. So I'll pass it over to you, Ifat.
Thanks, Jeremy. So as Jeremy mentioned, I'll be speaking on participation in AI, and we'll be sharing some stories and insights that we have captured from the recent consultations that we held across Bangladesh, covering 5 geographical locations from Dhaka to Sylhet, Khulna to Chittagong districts, and speaking with different socio-demographic groups. If you can look at the next slide. So we have spoken with young and older social media users, social media content creators, students, mobile financial service MFS users, farmers, rural women, persons with disability, and SME entrepreneurs. Now, there is a reason why we chose to speak with these groups. Across nearly all groups, AI is understood less as a singular technology and more through the lens of the familiar digital platforms that they use on a daily basis, such as Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and the MFS platform. So this is why we used a platform-based framing to design the consultation to allow people to kind of ground their perceptions in their lived experiences. And of course, this approach has its own limitations. For one, it foregrounds perceived experience, that is what people think AI is doing, rather than how AI system functions in practice. However, the perceived experiences are not trivial. They shape people's behavior, trust, and engagement with AI, and therefore these are important to consider for formulating AI policy and designing inclusive AI-based tools. So this is why we chose this platform-based framing or approach. And we have conducted a total of 32 focus group discussions with 240 participants and 20 in-depth interviews with the groups that I've mentioned. And we asked them not only about how they perceive AI, but how they interact with it in their lives. And what we've heard from these consultations are less about data model or algorithms and more about the trust, agency, their fears or concerns, and the stories of hope. So participation in AI starts with awareness. One of the key takeaways from the consultations is the divide between informed and uninformed users of AI, that is those who very actively integrate AI in their lives and livelihoods versus those for whom AI remains an invisible, sort of unrecognized. So we asked people what AI means to them. If you see the word cloud there. And for the younger and more tech-savvy participants, particularly content creators, students, and entrepreneurs, AI is often seen as an enabler, offering tools for productivity, for monetization, and creative expression. They used words such as helper, assistant, lifesaver to describe AI. On the other hand, the older users, persons with disability, and the marginalized communities, they often encounter AI through passive exposure. And to them, AI is a vague something good, or machine, or a robot, or simply unknown. Their limited digital literacy and access not only restrict their benefits, but also increases the risk of misinformation, fraud, and exclusion. So while the young and tech-savvy see AI as a companion, the older and marginalized users, for them, AI is invisible, which tells us that AI is here and now, but not so for everyone. Participation in AI is not just about knowing what it is about how people use it, trust it, and feel empowered by it. and people's ability to engage with AI can vary dramatically. For example, young content creators are using AI-powered tools such as CapCut and ChatGPT to streamline their work, grow their audiences, and earn a living. On the other hand, older users and those in the rural areas often engage with AI unknowingly through Facebook recommendations or mobile financial service fraud detection algorithms. However, they cannot recognize this interaction or describe it because they lack the language or the literacy to describe. And many of the participants did not even kind of realize or know the AI systems that is working behind these services that they're using. This divide between informed and uninformed users is not just about access or connectivity, it's about essentially about agency and power to use, to choose, and to pursue. When we talk about participation in AI, trust also plays a major role. And if people cannot trust the systems that they're interacting with, they lose confidence and their sense of control. Agency is not just about access or awareness, it's about knowing how the system works and why. For most people, even the young and tech-savvy participants, that clarity does not exist. For example, many social media users and content creators voiced their frustration with the lack of transparency in AI algorithms, especially around content moderation and outreach, fraud detection, and automated recommendations. And users often don't realize that AI algorithm-driven systems are at work in making the decisions that affect their income from content outreach, their freedom of speech, or their choices and opportunities in the content that they see on their own social media feeds. With this lack of clarity comes lack of trust and sense of control that they have over AI-driven systems. And this lack of clarity is not a technological gap. It's a gap in trust. It's a gap in power and agency. Another factor affecting people's trust in AI is the AI-powered deepfakes and misinformation that erode people's sense of truth and their power to act. There is one widely recognized phrase among Bangladeshi social media users that says, "These can be edited." So this phrase has been used many times in memes, in comments, sometimes humorously, sometimes seriously, to express their profound skepticism towards the authenticity of digital content, be it politically or socially controversial phone call recording or a photo or video going viral on the social media. And what brought about this skepticism is the AI-powered news or disinformation and deepfakes, especially in the current context of ongoing political transition in the country. Another issue very closely linked with this AI-powered misinformation, disinformation is the issue of the ability to verify the information and content. And we have found that not just the marginalized or older users, even the more AI-aware, young, tech-savvy social media users often struggle with verifying the authenticity of the contents that they see on social media. Interestingly, in the absence of a formal and effective verification mechanism, people have universally taken over this responsibility of fact-checking upon themselves, and they rarely hold the social media platforms accountable for ensuring the authenticity of the content. In addition to this lack of accountability, there is a gender dimension to the inequalities that are being amplified in the digital spaces. As many participants in the consultations expressed their concern over the misuse of AI to create explicit deepfake images or videos for blackmail, harassment, or defamation. And women are disproportionately fearful of being target of AI-generated deepfakes, which leads them to self-censorship and altering their behavior online, often restricting their freedom of expression and participation in the digital spaces. There is a relatively lower perceived risk among male users, which highlights the asymmetrical and gender unequal nature of this threat. Finally, what we need to understand and consider in designing and deploying AI is that those who are most excluded by AI are not excluded because they resist, but perhaps they have just never been asked to participate or designed to participate. For example, when given a relatable example, use of AI tools in agriculture or farming. One female farmer found such applications to be very helpful. But then again, if it requires a smartphone for them to access this application, they won't be able to avail of it. So which tells us when people see a reflection of themselves in the technology, when AI speaks their language, meets their needs, they respond with curiosity and with enthusiasm. People need culturally resonant, linguistically accessible, and contextually grounded ways of understanding and influencing the AI systems that shape their lives. So participation in AI is not just about access to technology, it's about language, literacy, trust, and power. And it's about who gets to shape the future rather than who gets shaped by it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ifat. This was very, very interesting. Colleagues, guests, please do use the Q&A if you have questions for Ifat. We are going to switch to Jennifer, and we'll try and keep some time at the end to answer the questions. I see some may have already been answered. But right now, over to you, Jennifer. And again, please use the Q&A if you have any questions.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Ifat. So good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. I know that people are joining from all over the world. I'm Jennifer Hotsko, Head of Exploration at the UNDP Accelerator Lab in Panama. So as we've heard today, from Ifat, from Jeremy, artificial intelligence doesn't have to be about replacing human intelligence, it can amplify it. And when it comes to the cities that we live in, that amplification can and should be collective. So as we navigate, accelerating climate change, urban migration, digital transformation, the question isn't whether AI will shape our future, but it's how it's going to shape it and for whom is it going to shape it. Right. So today I'd like to share a little bit about how we in Panama have been experimenting with generative AI to expand participation in shaping more inclusive urban futures. And you'll see the photo on the screen right now. But our work is grounded in the belief that technology should and not only be democratized, but that we must also be democratic about how technology itself is evolving. So the image that you see on the screen, it's probably unfamiliar to people outside of Panama, but it's probably one of the more photographed areas of the city because, as you could probably infer, it makes inequality visible. So in the background, you have these luxury high rises, and in the foreground, right, you have a dense, low income neighborhood with some informal settlements, and they're just meters apart, yet worlds away in terms of access to infrastructure, safety, and a voice in decision making. So images like these help crystallize inequality. So at the Accelerator Lab in Panama, we wondered, could AI help communities visualize equity? And what could a just future look like? So next slide, Jeremy, please. So Panama, if you don't know, it has one of the highest income inequality indexes in the region. But inequality isn't just a number. It shows up in who gets heard, whose needs are designed for, and who has a say in shaping the future of cities. So too many communities, like the one I showed you previously, are left out of decision-making processes that deeply affect their lives, and sometimes without even realizing that a decision has been made. So what does it mean to plan for a city with its people rather than for them? So if you go to the next slide, Jeremy, the place in the foreground, I didn't actually tell you, but it has a name. It's called Boca La Caja. And just in the past few weeks in Panama, this small coastal neighborhood has been in national headlines. Residents protested what they feared were these covert efforts to change zoning laws. And of course, they were moves that were seen as threats, not only to their homes, but to their rights. So because of protests and a lot of backlash, the city has since walked back these proposals, but the tension revealed something potentially deeper, right? A fear of being excluded from the future and a call for truly participatory urban planning. So what's powerful is that this preview of tensions, it shows how planning without participation can fuel mistrust, right? Even despite sometimes good intentions. So next slide, Jeremy. So our question as an accelerator lab, right, is can AI help us open new doors for participation? And interestingly enough, the work that we started happened before the conflict that I just mentioned in the previous slide, but it just shows how relevant this is. We didn't wait for a crisis to start asking questions. So we asked them early because, you know, the best time to design inclusion into AI systems is before they shape the rules. So could AI help reverse this trend? Could emerging technologies open and not close new doors for civic participation? So we wanted to focus on two key areas to test this. We wanted to focus on climate scenario planning and intergenerational public space design. And both of these we wanted to test using a generative AI platform. What's on the screen, it's called Urbanist AI. Many of you may have used it. There's other areas of UNDP that have tested, but what it does is it creates real-time visual renderings from text prompts. So if you're not familiar with visual renderings and how text prompts work, I invite you to explore with the platform. But basically, with a mere text prompt, you can transform an image in real time. So I'll show you a little bit about what this means in the following slides. So our first experiment involved co-creating climate scenarios with students at the University of Panama. So what we did was we asked them to describe how they imagine their neighborhoods under different climate conditions. So they would upload pictures of their neighborhoods, of their communities, of their houses. And using Urbanist AI, they were able to translate these ideas into visual scenarios. So a tool like this helps people, especially without technical expertise, interact with climate risks in ways that feel real and relatable and grounded in a lived experience. So we asked them to create dystopian prompts, right? So what catastrophic event, right, applied to their community. And then we also asked them to, create utopian scenarios, like these crazy, amazing, beautiful ideas for their cities. And the prompts produced some really shocking results, right, that maybe someone may have never been able to imagine before. So neighborhoods completely underwater, or cities crumbling under drought. One student commented that, oh my gosh, this looks so real. Now I'm worried about what this means for my city and more locally, the Panama Canal, which reference, recent limitations due to drought, which has made international, headlines. Other people laughed at these bizarre scenarios, like snow, for example, in Panama. So the images felt close for comfort, but they also disrupted thought. I mean, it doesn't snow in Panama. If you've ever been to Panama, I mean, the need for a jacket is rare to nil. So in the utopian round, we saw, other incidents like solar panels, green spaces, resilient architecture, and it sparked hope, but it also sparked this realistic skepticism. This scenario could only happen in our dreams, participants, said. So I think the important thing is AI didn't give answers, but it made people ask better questions. It sparked this sense of urgency and at the same time, imagination. So next we turn to public space design. We brought together youth and seniors, two groups that are often left out of urban planning due to, the technical nature of the discipline of architecture and design. But using, again, Urbanist AI, they co-designed their ideal neighborhood spaces. So this wasn't only about designing better parks or safer sidewalks. It was about building trust. It was about dialogue. It was about different generations seeing each other, not just as users of the same spaces, but as collaborators in shaping these spaces. So this was design as relationship building. So the next slide, Jeremy, please. So participants worked in these intergenerational teams, like you saw in the previous. We have students with, older people from the community, and they worked to reimagine public spaces in a neighborhood called Betania, which is a middle-class neighborhood in Panama. And again, there were moments of surprise, laughter, and learning. In one group, a student designed a beautiful garden. But an older participant smiled and said, well, these plants aren't native, to Panama, and they would never grow here, right? So that moment, and there were many like those, as small as it seems, it captures something important, that technology alone isn't enough. We need local knowledge, and we need these feedback loops. So they weren't just design exercises, they were these acts of civic learning, but participants saw their ideas matter. And they saw how technology could reflect, but also challenge their assumptions about spaces. And last slide, Jeremy, please. So what did we learn from this exercise? I think AI can absolutely support collective intelligence, but only if we design it that way. Only if we shift from asking, how do we make technology accessible, to how do we make technology accountable? Right? So as one participant put it, it's not just about democratizing technology. It's about being democratic about technological developments. And that distinction is huge, and it absolutely matters. So if we want inclusive cities, we need inclusive systems. And that means starting with inclusive conversations. So we've documented both of these experiments in two blogs, one on climate futures, the other on these intergenerational design, and we'd be happy to share them. So please feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jennifer, and Ifat as well again. Colleagues again, and friends, guests, please do react in the chat. I see one reaction. We're going to move ahead. So based on these two, very concrete examples of indeed what we hear and what we test and why we test them and so on, and the connections between, again, participation, collective intelligence, and AI. Back to this idea of AI being on the horizon and how we get there and how can we, help shift, I guess, or drive the development of AI as a technology to better complement collective intelligence for supporting sustainable development. We've been working on trying to formalize a bit of a framework and a roadmap of what we see as important coming from all of the work, again, that you just heard and the summaries that I gave before. So please consider this a work in progress that has 4 components, and I'm going to pass it over to Drasko to dive into this before we close out for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. When you look at this, you see one dimension here is, maybe you could just move to the next slide, please. Okay. Yeah, so the first dimension that we defined, or the first axis, is participation, with the question, where do we go? A key aspect is about the AI narratives. We need different narratives, not AGI supremacy, but how to use AI to uphold human agency and support better collective decisions. Back to the key messages of UNDP's new Human Development Report, the question is, who builds the narrative, who makes the decision, whose choice is it? We've run consultations and national dialogues on AI that help develop new narratives that may contrast with those produced in the global north, and you could hear more about that from Ifat and Jeremy today. The second aspect are AI use cases. You could hear from Jennifer how AI could facilitate participation. We use participatory design and experimentation to develop new use cases and applications of AI with communities. In addition to 29 use cases that Jeremy mentioned, at the moment we are working on new use cases on information integrity, tackling misinformation. We use generative AI for pre-banking. It's a technique to preempt manipulation online. Pre-banking messages are designed to help people identify and resist manipulative content. By forewarning people and equipping them to spot and refute misleading arguments, these messages help them gain resilience to being misled in the future. We also work on cities. We use generative AI to better connect citizens with municipal services. And on tourism, enhancing tourism experiences with AI-generated multimedia narratives that make local cultures and knowledge visible. Next slide, please. The second dimension is development. How do we get there? Here we look at the effects of AI on collective intelligence and how the race to AI is affecting the internet, data commons, and other conducive spaces for collective intelligence. Here we are picking up some signals. One signal is, for example, UN High-Level Advisory Board on AI interviewed 270 experts, and they identified as a top risk over the next 2 to 5 years damage to information integrity. Misinformation, disinformation, impersonation, challenging information integrity with deep fakes and synthetic media, etc. Another signal is death of data commons. A new study examined thousands of websites that are commonly used to train AI systems and found that many website owners are increasingly adding restrictions to prevent AI companies from using their content. In just 1 year, from 2023 to 2024, these restrictions grew dramatically, with nearly half of a major training data set now technically off limits according to websites' terms of service. This growing wave of restrictions could significantly limit the diversity and quality of data available to train future AI models, affecting not just commercial AI development, but also academic research and nonprofit AI projects. This has consequences for model alignment, for scalability, and may also lead to new approaches to learning with data constraints. Another signal is the end of high-quality human-generated data online. Researchers estimate that AI language models will exhaust the world's supply of human-written text data, which is about 300 trillion words, sometime between 2026 and 2032, potentially creating a major bottleneck for further AI development unless some new approaches appear, like synthetic data or improved training methods that could be developed in the future. Edge and frugal AI. If you look at what's happening now, let's say in 2024, US private investment into AI grew to $109 billion, according to AI Index report by Stanford, nearly 12 times China's $9.3 billion, and 24 times the UK's $4.5 billion. Generative AI saw particularly strong momentum, attracting $33.9 billion globally in private investments. If you look at the maps by Google, Amazon, Meta on their data centers, they are not in low and middle income countries. Africa is home to 1.6% of the world's data centers, and Africa has less than 1% of the world's data center capacity. It's important to work on R&D on low resource computing solutions that can easily be deployed in countries and regions that lack hard infrastructure. Developing AI in low and middle income countries does not necessarily require billions of dollars. They are open and smaller models that one could download and run locally, models that generate images, answer questions, write code, and they do not need the internet connection. Of course, running models in the cloud has its own advantages, but running them locally, we are not sending personal or sensitive data to a remote data center. For example, we tried running 8 billion parameter DeepSeek R1 model on a laptop with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and it works. The more effective path forward involves scaling right. by creating homegrown AI technologies tailored to local languages, local cultures, and economic realities. This approach avoids the pitfalls of Western-centric models that occasionally produce incorrect and untrustworthy results when applied to different contexts. Ultimately, fostering local talent and ideas is crucial for building a useful and trusted infrastructure that, from the ground up. Next slide, please. So the framework in progress, this work in progress, as Jeremy said, at AI as a technology, it looks at AI as a technology, but no technology exists in a vacuum, and it's a socio-technical system at the other end of the spectrum. And here it requires good governance. It requires making policy decisions and regulatory decisions, and for that also we need to be anticipatory. Our work spans from community-based solutions to policy and advocacy, and it's a mix of quantitative, more technology-based solutions and qualitative approaches. Next slide, please. This is a roadmap, having in mind our functions within the labs: exploration, experimentation, and solutions mapping. Till now, we've been mostly working on participation, on the use cases, and on the narratives. And we feel strongly that the skills and capabilities that the labs have are what's needed to use of this framework as a roadmap for future R&D. We need experimentation on use cases and the development of technology that can run in low resource, low bandwidth areas. We also need use cases that are not yet identified. This requires experimentation. At the same time, we need exploration and the futures thinking, horizon scanning, to anticipate new use cases, to identify where they might exist, and to anticipate how building solutions might impact collective intelligence. At the heart of this is, of course, solutions mapping and community engagement to build these use cases with the communities and take into account the narratives that people want and that make AI desirable going forward. The future of AI is about agency, participation, and ensuring technology serves diverse global communities. Thank you, and back to Jeremy now.
Thanks, Drasko. And very quickly, we wanted to close it off with two quotes of our own. You've already heard one of them from Jennifer. The first one really is we need to all think about AI in collective terms, because whether we like it or not, we're all part of this current wave of AI, whether as users, consumers of AI, but also as producers of the data that feeds the training of the models. So we're all implicated, we're all involved. So it's really, again, crucial to think of this in terms of collective and how we can augment our collective intelligence in this. The second one that you've heard from Jennifer is obviously it's important to shift the lens from democratizing technology, which is a motto that's very much used in more sort of tech spheres, and reappropriate that term to being more democratic about how we project our common or shared technological futures. With that, a big thank you to everyone for listening to us. We are happy to take questions. I see a few coming in the chat. I don't know, Drasko, if you were paying attention to the ones that were at the top. Shall we go through them?
Yes, there were a few comments. There was one on augmentation versus replacement. There was also a question on the platform that Jeremy, you could probably answer on the SDG Commons, Innovation Commons, about the API to these solutions. So access through API to the solutions, and also the World Economic Forum Strategic Intelligence Platform that we are also in touch with and partnering with.
Brilliant. Yes. So I think the first one is indeed a shared reference. Thank you very much, Frederick. And I see you have another question in the chat. On the question of APIs, I will recommend, Victoire, that you reach out to us. You have our emails here. Please reach out to me, jeremy.boy@undp.org. We do have open APIs for accessing the content. We can get you connected to the content. Regarding WEF, yes, we did actually have early conversations with the team a while ago. I wasn't really leading on that, but there have been touch points, yes. Maybe here, looking ahead, what capabilities do communities need to develop to meaningfully participate in AI governance and development?
I could answer that one.
Please,
Yeah. So, for example, one cohort of skills are participatory design skills to actively shape AI use cases rather than being passive recipient. And that means learning to identify problems that AI could help solve in their specific contexts. And the other one is a critical need for technical capacity building around frugal AI and around, in general, technical capacity to develop anything using AI technologies. There needs to be some certain level of understanding to certain levels of technology that are available today. And communities can learn to work with smaller open models that run locally, as I already mentioned. And of course, to learn how to protect data sovereignty while building solutions that are tailored to their local context, to their languages and cultures. That's very brief.
thank you, Drasko. I don't know if Jennifer or Ifat, you want to add anything to that? Or I can bring
Yeah,
you in.
I would say, how is UNDP supporting in this capacity building? The last part of the question, I think, we support in a variety of different initiatives. I remember specifically we had an early warning monitoring system for a vulnerable community, and we realized very quickly that the digital capacity, let's say, was very, very low. Beyond responding with WhatsApp, users, participants didn't really have familiarity with even the technology on their smartphones, let alone a computer. So if we talk about leading no one behind with technology, I think we need to understand, we even like when we look at data, right? Digital like penetration is really high in certain regions, but what does that actually mean? That means we own a smartphone, but we're only using it for WhatsApp. So how can we ensure that people aren't left behind? So UNDP works on this in a lot of fronts, just to complement what Drasko was saying.
Brilliant, thank you. Maybe we can take a few of these questions in one. So there is this interesting question from an anonymous attendee on what role are local governments playing or ought to play in the implementation of AI-driven solutions generated by the labs. This is, I guess, a matter of scaling experiments that have taken place in the labs. Or that are, being conducted in partnership with local authorities. Maybe I can pass that over to you, Ifat, maybe specifically on the work that we're doing with information integrity. But I think related to this and related to what Drasko was saying as well, this question on whether we see it for low and middle income countries to develop their own large language models. And there was another one. So on this one, okay. On this one, very quickly, yes, UNDP is also working on building large language models, or at least collecting the resources right now for helping build large language models for so-called low resource languages. So there are programs on this, part of an AI hub that has been set up in partnership with the Italian presidency of the G7. And there was another question I think that responded to, but while I find it, maybe I'll pass it over to you, Ifat, and Jennifer and Drasko, if you want to jump in on.
Yeah, I just want to jump in quickly on, for example, what role are local governments playing or should they play? I think very central, and I think it's understanding, first, governments serve the people, right? So what are the needs of the citizens? And I can give you just a quick example where we're piloting something with a local, with a municipality to basically increase, response and improve the requests that citizens are allowed to make through the municipality's platform. So it's something very, very, very basic. But if you're thinking about the end user, right? If you're designing for the end user in mind, and then work backwards, right? And the way that labs like to work is from the ground up, right? So the user, the citizen, it's what are their needs, and let's just say at a very basic level, well, we're having these delayed responses from the municipality, they're not answering, so it's like, okay, municipality, are you interested in testing, AI, on your website, the back end, just to see whether we can improve response time for citizens, something very simple like that. But I think it's maybe a bottom-up approach sometimes. And then just to complement that with one of the other questions, what the challenges using AI in rural communities. I think I answered this a little bit previously. I think when you see just, basic technological capacity or tech capacity is not there, how can you make that quantum leap, to AI? But then let's just say in the interim, what tools make it a little bit easier to bridge that gap? Because there's complexity in AI, but there's also AI that helps facilitate these complex processes. So I think there's, an important, middle part there.
Just wanted to jump in to share two examples from Bangladesh as well. So in Bangladesh, UNDP is helping both the local government and the national level authorities to help people access public service using AI-based tools. For example, with our one of the city corporation, we are designing an AI and interact with it and avail the information related to public service, accessing different public services. And we have also deployed in collaboration with the local government, we have already deployed one AI assistant tool, GenAI-based assistant tool that can help people fill out forms. So something as simple as filling out a form to acquire a trade license or to get a tax identification number can be very challenging for some. So in that space, what we are trying to do is develop a model, develop a tool that can help people fill out these forms that are necessary for them to avail public services through conversations. So through just conversation, the AI assistant tool can acquire their information from the people and then fill out the form for them. So these are some of the examples of how UNDP is working with both local government and national government in helping people access different services.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ifat and Jennifer. I see we are at time. We are losing participants, attendees. Shall we take one more question for those who are online? Yeah. Okay, maybe the difficult one on the future, predicting the future of small language models versus large language models. Drasko, do you want to reflect on that one? I have my thoughts, but
well, yeah, we already discussed that a few occasions. So my personal belief is that there will be more small specialized language models that will be very useful for certain applications. And as I already said, low and middle income countries do not need to play the big game to win. And more and more useful AI models are appearing on Hugging Face, and we are playing with them, and we see how they could benefit certain narrow applications within various domains, healthcare, agriculture, education, and so on. But only using locally relevant data and languages. That also means that we need to understand well the local context. Yeah, that would be brief.
brilliant. Thank you, Drasko. I think, yeah, to me, I guess my quick answer to this is it's a matter of emergency. Do we have time to build all the infrastructure around the world that would be required to indeed develop large language models that are relevant? Again, UNDP is working on this. We are all working on this. But I think we also need to develop, different approaches here. And to Drasko's point, very much explore what's already available, what's already open source, what can be, relatively easily at a relatively low cost fine-tuned for specific applications that move towards, in our framework, towards the edge and frugal AI space there. So yes, sort of longer term, it's highly desirable that we, diversify the languages and so on and have more dedicated, larger language models. But the question is, what can we do, again, with a sense of emergency right now? With that, maybe we can close it out. And thank you, everyone, for staying on, for staying a bit longer. Huge thanks to Jennifer, Aoife, Drasko, for great presentations. And yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Everyone.
Everyone.